And you always have the Macarena, right?
Yes, always.
My name is Alex Badia. I'm the style director on Women's Wear Daily, and we're doing this Zoom call. I am in New York City in my apartment, aka my office, and my gym and everything.
Hi, this is Ali. I work from WWD in Milan. I'm the fashion editor, and I'm actually back to the office.
You and I have been doing fashion weeks together for at least, 13 years. This is the first time that we didn't do a fashion week together, but we were sort of together because we were both watching the videos online instead of going to shows.
It was very different because we are so used to be such in a rush and like running from one show to the other. So it was different to be in the office, like in front of the screen, looking at these videos. At the same time, we had the chance, since the situation is much better in Milan, to do appointments in the showroom. The experience of the Digital Fashion Week has been very positive.
I understand that these videos, they were what was needed for the time, and they're going to be incredible historical records of what happened and these times. However, there is just nothing like going to a show. Let's talk about Prada, because everyone is talking about Prada. You start, what do you think of Prada?
Prada is definitely the winner of the Milan Digital Fashion Week, and I'm so happy of that because it was the last show of Miuccia Prada by herself, because from September she will be joined by Raf Simons. I think the videos that she commissioned to these 5 artists and photographers were fantastic.
The Willy van der Piri and Martin Sims videos, they were 2 of my favorites. The 5 different videos for different sections of the collection. It was wonderful. I'm going to read a quote from Miuccia Prada that you included in your review, if you don't mind, Ale. She said, and I quote, "The clothes are simple, but with the concept of simplicity as an antidote to useless complication." End quote. And I do think this is so important as a message for this season. It's basically an antidote to useless complication. So I do think for me, that really summarized that collection. And it was such a great flashback to 90s. The menswear was amazing. I did love that fluid, sort of deconstructed sartorial pieces and the long coats.
Yeah, and I also love the fact that the silhouettes were so narrow and sharp, and with the women, she explored simplicity, but with a couture touch. So the big volume, super feminine, girly in a way. We were all at home, in the office, whatever, but we were not physically in the same place, and we were in front of the screen. And she understood the importance of sending out a message which is so precise, because when you have a screen between you and the object, things become more complicated to analyze in the details.
Such a going back to basics, to the start, to the core of the brand. That, as you said, I do think one of the things that people did was themselves. They went back to who they were, and they concentrated. And I have to say that having the collection labeled "the show that never happened" as the theme, it really helped me control my uncontrollable FOMO of not being there. I want to talk about MSGM.
I had the chance to see the clothes in the showroom with Massimo, with a walkthrough, and at the same time they participated to Milan Digital Fashion Week with a video. Let's start from the video. It was a short movie directed by Luca Finotti. It was sort of inspired by Scam, which is this North European series about teenagers, and I think it really portrayed very well the spirit of the youngest generations. He got a very diverse casting of guys that from very different backgrounds, but all raised in Italy, showing that Italy is a country where you can find big diversity if you want to see it. It gives you that summer mood.
Good guilty pleasure.
Yes, definitely. And of course, in the video, you see the collection, the men's spring and the women's resort. But you also see some pieces of this capsule that Massimo and MSGM developed called Fantastic Green, which is a capsule of super cool jerseys, basically, that are 100% sustainable. And I love the collaboration he did with an American artist. And so he printed this pajama suit with the image of Laurel Canyon at night. He also introduced a key item of the season, which is the pajama suit, the revisited pajama suit.
he, in a way, is unapologetic about celebrating youth and really putting it at the forefront. MSGM has always felt to me such an urban street style sort of type of clothing, and seeing it in nature, it really gave such a different point of view. I did love those sweaters and vests with the prints, with even the fringe intarsia details were excellent. I thought that he presented a very strong collection, and I liked the fact that it was very MSGM. So let's talk about another brand that really presented a super strong show, and that was Ermenegildo Zegna by Alessandra Sartori. We both, you and I, were very excited specifically about this collection because to our memory is one of the best he's ever done. Talk to us about that.
I think that the Ermenegildo Zegna show was very romantic and delicate in a masculine way, which is sometimes it's really hard to convey. He played with soft constructions, but very impeccable and precise. I also think that he was really smart to use a color palette, which was delicate again, and a palette inspired by the Zegna. I think that in the past few seasons, Zegna focused more on creating something super contemporary in terms of look and sometimes technical in the use of the materials and the construction. This time, I think they went back to the more original roots of the brands, but they did in a way that was just definitely not nostalgic, but that felt very modern.
I agree. I also, like, if you look at the first 5 looks, for example, you have a very good feeling of what the collection is about. I mean, that super relaxed tailoring with interesting volumes, sometimes boxy, then the utility, sort of the chic utility that you see throughout, also very directional constructions in layering and shirtings. But then you have things that feel a little bit modern. Like it's like there's a lot of silk, tons of silk, a lot of fluid to help that fluid to bridge the pajama with the daytime. Very elegant. I did love the use of those soft trench coats in different tonal colors that are basically very part of that fluid, elongated silhouette that is also a big trend. And it is difficult to try to reinvent a staple and a classic. And I did think that this has been his best effort to date to try to reinvent a suit that is new.
They didn't try to do something groundbreaking in terms of presentation. They stick to the runway show, but it worked really well.
I mean, at times I understand messaging is really important, but I don't want messaging to really overtake the clothes that inspired the message to start with. Before we go to the next highlight for us, can you talk to us about Etro? Because that's the only show that you went to.
Yes, the only show. So we were basically in the courtyard of the Four Seasons Hotel in Milan. So they showed both women's resort and men's spring. They didn't want to present a collection which was meant to be a runway collection. They made a lineup which was very focused on daywear. For sure, to see something more fashion forward, we will have to wait until September, when they will go back to a bigger runway show.
But to see something that, again, goes back to who you are, the paisleys, the stripes, the silhouettes, the suitings, even the cover that we run was a very Etro, I don't think it's bad to say every day, because at the end of the day...
That's what I wanted.
Can we talk about Sune, please?
Yes.
And those avatars and moving and in those super
like
long...
Macarena.
Yeah, the Macarena. That's really funny. I love it. It was really fun. I loved it. Again, late 90s, early aughts, the super long coats, the big oversized legged pants and the Vans sneakers.
Crop tops.
Talk to me about that. Yes, the crop tops.
Okay, Sune, I think that Loris and Simone, they were kind of brave this season. I think they really made a smart move since they decided to produce a collection only in canvas. So white.
Great.
They basically created this platform called Sune Canvas. And you as a buyer, you have the chance to see all the pieces and see avatars wearing those pieces in all the different variations, options they have available. They basically created something that offers a 360 customization experience. So they smartly decided to use the avatars also to do a sort of digital event for Milan Digital Fashion Week. So every time that an avatar tapped the arm or the hips, they changed the colors and the patterns. It was super fun. I really like the fact that they tried to do something different.
It felt really techno-fabulous to me. So
it was a sort of digital rave party on the tune of La Macarena.
Yeah, exactly. I could not have said it better. Let's be a little bit critical for a second, because as much as I love the great effort of the Italian designers to make Milan Digital Fashion Week a success, and I think it was a success, I was let down by some of the brands that they just miss the opportunity or just use it to create brand videos, like in the case of Ferragamo, let's say.
Yeah, I think that, for example, Ferragamo and Missoni, we all know the fantastic heritage they have, but at the same time, as leading voices in the fashion industry, it's time for them to move forward a little bit, to take some risks. And I'm sorry to say this also because Ferragamo collection was really pretty. For Missoni, they didn't show anything. They just said today that they are not going to show.
Not in September.
Not even in September. So we have to be patient and wait for some injection of colors and patterns.
Before we go, is there going to be a Milan Fashion Week physical in September for women's wear?
There will be shows, there will be events, there will be appointments, there will be presentation. We know that it will be very hard for people from Asia and especially from the United States to come to Milan. But we will be here.
Are there any takeaways, any lessons learned from this Digital Fashion Week?
I think that for some brands, the digital is a great option. I think that sometimes it's not really necessary to organize a big fashion shows or super expensive presentation. For smaller brands or independent labels, I think digital offers incredible opportunities. Since you have a collection and since you have a point of view, you can really deliver something that has a value for the industry.
Ale, I miss you so much. This was excellent. I know that you and I will be talking later today, but thank you so much for being with us. And for the latest news and more fashion reviews, please go to WWD.com. Stay tuned. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone.